Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Logan, and today we're going to be taking a quick look at the Starke Sound Brev Series VLOT towers. These are going to be the first actively powered speakers that we featured on our channel, so if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, then stick around and we'll get into it right after the intro. Alright, so just like I said in the beginning, these are the Starke Sound Brev Series VLOT towers, and these are a lot different from something like the Starke Sound Brio Series V62 towers that we reviewed previously, because these are active, and basically that means they have power built right in. So you're not going to have to use any kind of an external amplifier to get these things running. So in this video we're going to be taking a quick look at the hardware, some of the big specifications, and just talking about how they sound. So let's get right into it. The first thing I want to take a look at is the tower itself. So obviously this is a pair of towers, and these are actually pretty neat. So if you take off this grill, we can get a real nice look at the drivers here. And this is a pretty simple arrangement we've got here with a single silicone dome tweeter and two 4-inch mid-bass drivers. This right here is the left speaker, which actually houses the very important amplifier and Bluetooth control panel. If we come over to the right channel, what you might notice is that this doesn't have the same thing. And that's because Starke was actually kind of smart when they designed these speakers, and they decided, let's take the V42 towers that don't have any amplification built in and just throw an amplifier inside of one of them to power both channels. And that's exactly what they did. And I think they actually built a pretty nice little system in terms of how compact they are. What I notice is that they're very small compared to something like the V62 towers. They don't take up a lot of space, which is going to be really nice if you don't have a lot of space, you want to set up a very compact 2.1 setup, because these do have a subwoofer pre-out, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But I think there's some things we have to talk about with the aesthetics. They come with this very interesting sort of fractured design on the grille. They're not an aesthetic that I particularly love. Thank you very much. But they work. They sit in front of the drivers. As you can see, they're pretty bendy, which keeps them lightweight, I suppose, but they're kind of flimsy feeling, so we're gonna have to knock some points for that. The grills, I would not recommend listening to these speakers with the grills on, because they do seem to impair the sound a lot, especially the highs coming from that tweeter. So if we just take a look at the top here, you can really see the profile of these speakers. They are very, very small, which again is going to be great if you don't have a lot of space. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the specs. Starting with the drivers, obviously, we've got the 1-inch silicone dome tweeter that I previously mentioned on top of these two 4-inch mid-bass drivers. All these drivers are going to be powered by the dual 150-watt amplifiers built into the VLOT tower left channel. And the right channel is actually just passive, so Starke includes a speaker cable that lets you connect both together. In terms of I/O, these speakers pretty much have everything you'd expect, like Bluetooth connectivity, analog RCA left and right inputs, coaxial inputs, as well as a Toslink input. And it even has a subwoofer pre-out in case you want to hook up a subwoofer, which is a really nice touch for a 2.1 stereo setup. Alright, so moving around to the top of the VLOT towers, we have the built-in control panel, which is actually pretty cool for using Bluetooth. So basically all you have to do is hold the power button, and it will light up, show you what mode you're in depending on the color, and it will even tell you what Bluetooth codec you're in depending on these lights that will pop up in the top. So if I go ahead and connect my phone over Bluetooth, which I'll be doing very quickly right here. I'm currently connected to the VLOT towers, so I'm going to press F until I go into blue mode, which is Bluetooth, and in just a second here, the speaker should show up. Alright, so as you can see now, we're currently running on the LDAC codec, the lossless digital audio codec, which is going to be one of the best Bluetooth signals that you can get to a speaker like this. And that's actually pretty nice because a lot of speakers don't support LDAC yet, so getting this in a speaker that is meant for 2-channel listening is actually pretty impressive. So that's pretty much it. You also have volume controls, volume up and down, and obviously your power button right there. So setting these things up is very, very simple. And if you just want to know real quick, you can press the F button to switch between different inputs like analog RCA, coaxial, and all of that. We did our testing on multiple different modes to get a feel for which input sounded the best. They all pretty much sounded the same, meaning that the DAC inside of this is pretty good. All right, and with all that said, I want to start talking about sound quality. And the first thing that I want to dive into is bass, which for speakers with only dual 4-inch mid-range drivers was actually pretty incredible. These rear-ported towers were actually able to fill the room with some pretty decent bass. Again, considering their size, they're definitely not going to be any kind of a replacement for a decent subwoofer, but we were actually pretty impressed. With most tracks, it felt like things were well-rounded, maybe not particularly super tight, but again, you're going to have some trade-offs with such small drivers and such a small package. In terms of the mid-range, things were actually pretty good in some tracks, but in some other particular tracks, I do feel like the mid-range started to sound a little thick and maybe bloated would be the correct term. And this is just my opinion. I'm not any kind of an audio engineer, but I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that Starke Sound decided to cross these over at such a high frequency at about 3.9 kilohertz as being the culprit. With most speakers, you will see a lower crossover frequency, meaning that more of the mid-range will actually come out of the tweeter rather than the lower frequency drivers. And what they were able to do with the bass is amazing, but I feel like at a higher crossover frequency, they are throwing a lot on those little 4-inch drivers. In terms of the treble, it was kind of the same way. In some tracks, it was completely fine, but we do feel like that in some tracks that really make use of imaging in those higher frequencies, you start to feel like something might be missing. Personally, it's a sound that I could totally listen to, but it felt lacking in some particular tracks in a way that many other speakers don't. So with all that said, I think I want to dig into the value of these speakers. And the first thing I want to mention here is that value is something that's to be perceived differently by every individual, depending on how much money you have, what you value, what you think is more convenient. Would you rather have a smaller speaker with power or a bigger speaker and separate amps? It's hard to find value in a product, but I want to talk about why I think the VLOT towers would be a really good option and maybe why you might want to look elsewhere. So my first point is that it's honestly very refreshing to see some hi-fi speakers in the active speaker market. I don't feel like many active, especially Bluetooth speakers, are going to offer the same kind of sound quality that these do, but there are also some drawbacks. Obviously, you have the really nice compact design, and all of your power, your DAC, your preamp, everything is just sitting in these speakers. But for the price, which is going to be $1,300 for these speakers, we've reviewed a lot of other speakers and amplifiers that could give you a very similar experience or possibly better experience for the same or lower price. Again, you're going to be stuck with separate amplifiers, which may not be what you want. You're going to be stuck with bigger towers, which you may not be able to accommodate in your space. So all in all, I think that the VLOT towers are a really great product, but in terms of figuring out whether or not it's the right product for you, that's something you're going to have to decide for yourself. So all in all, if you're looking for actually a pretty impressive contender in the high-end Bluetooth speaker market, then I think you should definitely be considering the Starke Sound Rev Series VLOT towers. So guys, I think that's going to go ahead and wrap up this video. If you thought this one was interesting, I certainly thought it was. First active speakers we've checked out on this channel, then make sure you go ahead and like, subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss any of our future content, and as always, have an awesome day.